Taman Han checked his reflection one more time in the polished metal wall. His diplomatic uniform looked perfect, not a single wrinkle in sight. At 28 years old, this was his biggest assignment yet. He was on Harmony 7, the massive space station where different alien species met to talk and make deals. Today, Earth would negotiate with the Viridian Empire, one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. "Stop worrying," Yuna Choi said, walking up beside him. She carried a data pad filled with translation notes. "Ambassador Park has done this 100 times. We just need to stand there and look professional." Taman nodded, but his stomach still felt tight. The Viridians were known for being strict about manners and tradition. One wrong move could ruin everything. Earth needed their technology trade agreement badly. The negotiation hall was enormous. The ceiling stretched so high that Taman could barely see it. Viridian guards stood at attention, their tall, blue-skinned bodies covered in ceremonial armor. They looked at the human delegation with cold, calculating eyes. Ambassador Doyun Park led the Earth team forward. He was a calm man in his 60s who never seemed nervous about anything. "Remember," he whispered to Taman, "let me do the talking. Just observe and learn." The Viridian delegation entered from the opposite side. High Chancellor Voss walked at the front, his long robes flowing behind him. Behind him came several advisors and military officers. Then everyone stopped moving. A woman entered last, and the entire room seemed to hold its breath. She was tall and graceful, with skin that shimmered like moonlight on water. Her eyes were a striking violet color, and she wore a crown made of some kind of glowing crystal. Taman knew immediately who she was. Princess Ayla, the crown princess of the Viridian Empire. "She was not supposed to be here," Yuna whispered urgently. Ambassador Park's expression stayed calm, but Taman saw him grip his datapad a little tighter. The princess attending meant this meeting was far more important than they thought. The greeting ceremony began. Both sides had to perform traditional gestures of respect. The humans had practiced for weeks. Taman watched carefully as Ambassador Park bowed in the Viridian style, then offered the ceremonial nutrient solution in a crystal container. This was supposed to symbolize sharing resources. Taman's job was simple. He just needed to stand ready with a second container in case anything went wrong. He held the backup crystal carefully, keeping his eyes forward like he was taught. Princess Ayla stepped forward to receive the offering. She moved with perfect control, every gesture precise. High Chancellor Voss began speaking in the Viridian language, a series of melodic sounds that the translators converted to English in their earpieces. Then it happened. A service drone passed too close behind Taman. He stepped aside to avoid it, and his elbow hit the table edge. The crystal container flew from his hands, spinning through the air in slow motion. Taman watched in horror as the bright blue nutrient solution splashed directly across Princess Ayla's white ceremonial robes. The room went completely silent. The princess stood frozen, blue liquid dripping from her elegant clothing. Every Viridian in the room stared at Taman with expressions ranging from shock to fury. One of the guards reached for his weapon. Taman's voice came out as a squeak. He cleared his throat and tried again. "I am so sorry. This was completely my fault." Ambassador Park stepped forward quickly, already forming diplomatic apologies, but Princess Ayla raised one hand to stop him. She looked down at her ruined robes, then at Taman. Her violet eyes studied him with an intensity that made him want to disappear. "You are the one who did this?" she asked. Her voice was clear and musical, speaking perfect English without a translator. "Yes, Your Highness." Taman bowed deeply, the way he saw in old Korean dramas his grandmother watched. "It was an accident. But that does not excuse my clumsiness. Please, allow me to make amends." "Make amends?" The princess tilted her head slightly. "What does this mean?" "In human culture, When we make a mistake, we try to fix it ourselves, Taman explained. He was probably breaking a dozen diplomatic rules, but he was already in terrible trouble. Your robes are damaged because of me. If you allow it, I would like to personally clean and repair them. High Chancellor Voss made a sound like a cat hissing. You dare suggest touching royal garments? This insult demands— I find this interesting, Princess Ayla interrupted. She looked at Taman with what might have been curiosity. Viridians would simply assign blame and expect compensation, but you offer personal service to correct your error? Yes, Your Highness. It is our way of showing we truly care about fixing what we broke. The princess considered this for a long moment. The other Viridians watched her with confusion. Finally, she spoke. Very well. I accept your offer. You will repair my robes using your human methods. High Chancellor Voss looked like he wanted to argue, but he could not contradict the princess directly. Ambassador Park shot Taman a look that promised a very long conversation later. Yuna covered her face with her hands. That was how Taman found himself in a small workroom 3 hours later, carefully treating the stained fabric with cleaning solutions he borrowed from the station's maintenance crew. Princess Ayla sat nearby, wearing a simple robe while her ceremonial clothes dried. Your people value emotional responses, she said suddenly. This is unusual in the galaxy. Taman looked up from his work. I suppose it is. Most species we have met think we are too emotional. Perhaps, the princess said, but you are the first person in many years to treat my problem as a personal responsibility rather than a political incident. Well, it was personal. I spilled it on you. A small smile appeared on her face. Exactly. They talked while Taman worked. He explained how human textile repair techniques worked, and she asked questions about Earth culture. He told her about Korean traditional clothing and how his grandmother taught him to sew. She seemed fascinated by the idea of family members teaching practical skills. On Viridian, royalty learns from specialized instructors, she explained. My grandmother and I never speak casually like you describe. That sounds lonely, Taman said without thinking. Then he realized he just called a princess's life lonely. I mean, I apologize, I should not— No, you are correct. It is lonely. She looked at him with those violet eyes again. You speak truth easily. This is also unusual. By the time Taman finished the repairs, the robes looked nearly perfect. Princess Ayla examined his work with approval. You have skill, she said. Thank you, Taman Han. He bowed. I am glad I could fix my mistake, Your Highness. As he left the workroom, he did not know that their conversation had been recorded by station security. He did not know that gossip was already spreading through Harmony 7 about the human who made the princess smile. He did not know that High Chancellor Voss was already composing an angry message to Earth's government. All Taman knew was that Princess Ayla had thanked him by name, and when she smiled, it felt like the whole galaxy got a little brighter. Ambassador Park was waiting in the hallway. My office, now, he said. We need to discuss what disaster control looks like. Taman followed, pretty sure his diplomatic career was already over. He could not have been more wrong. The message from Earth arrived 3 days after the incident. Taman sat in Ambassador Park's office, expecting to be sent home in disgrace. Instead, he learned about Earth's new plan. The Viridian Empire is angry, Ambassador Park explained, showing him the diplomatic communications. But Princess Ayla herself suggested a solution. She wants a cultural exchange event. Something called a Festival of Understanding. Yuna looked up from her data pad. And they want Taman to help organize it? Not just help. Work directly with the princess to coordinate everything. The ambassador gave Taman a long look. Apparently, she was impressed by your repair work and your honesty. The Viridian court is confused, but they are allowing it. Taman's mouth went dry. I have to work with Princess Ella? Directly? Earth's cultural ambassador, Hyun Kang, is arriving tomorrow to oversee things. But yes, you will be the primary contact with the princess. Ambassador Park leaned forward. Taemin, this is either going to save the trade negotiations or destroy them completely. Do not mess this up. A security officer named Minho Lee was assigned to protect Taemin. Not that I think you are in danger, Minho said cheerfully, but the Viridians are very serious about protocol. I am here to make sure nobody gets too angry. The first planning meeting took place in a neutral conference room. Princess Ayala arrived with her lady-in-waiting, a shorter Viridian woman named Lady Kira. General Threx, a stern military commander, stood in the corner watching everything with suspicious eyes. Engineer Han, the princess greeted him formally. Shall we begin? They spent hours discussing what the festival should include. At first, the conversation was stiff and formal. Taemin suggested demonstrations of human art and music. Ayla proposed exhibitions of Viridian technological achievements. Everything was polite and boring. Then Taemin mentioned Korean folk tales. What are folk tales? Ayla asked, showing genuine interest for the first time. Stories passed down through generations, Taemin explained. They teach lessons about life, love, and how to treat others. My grandmother used to tell them to me before bed. We have historical records, Ayla said slowly, but not stories for emotion. Tell me one of these tales. So Taemin told her the story of the sun and moon, about siblings who became celestial bodies to escape a tiger. He felt silly at first, telling a children's story to an alien princess, but Ayala listened with complete focus. The tiger represents danger, she said when he finished. The siblings represent cooperation. The transformation shows that sometimes we must change to survive. Exactly. You understood it perfectly. Lady Kira looked surprised. Your Highness, you analyzed an emotional story using logic. No, Ayala said softly. I felt the story first. Then I understood it. From that day, their planning meetings changed. They stopped being formal negotiations and became real conversations. Taemin brought more stories, and Ayala shared Viridian history that was not in any official records. She told him about the loneliness of being royal, how every action was watched and judged. I have never had a friend, she admitted one day. Only advisors and servants. What about your family? Taemin asked. My father is the emperor. My brother is the spare heir. We perform our roles. She looked at him. Is it different for humans? Very different. My sister Aunha calls me every week just to complain about her boss. We argue about everything. But she is my best friend. Ayla seemed to find this concept amazing. You choose to speak to family even when not required? Of course. They are family. 2 weeks before the festival, something went wrong. Taemin arrived early at the exhibition hall to check the setup. He found the main display smashed, equipment broken everywhere. Someone had sabotaged their work. Minho immediately called security, but Taemin was already examining the damage. The central holographic projector was destroyed. This machine was supposed to show a combined display of Earth and Viridian culture. It took months to program. Princess Ayla arrived minutes later. She looked at the destruction with a calm expression, but Taemin saw her hands clench into fists. General Threx will investigate who did this, she said coldly. We do not have time for investigations, Taemin said, thinking fast. The festival is in 2 weeks. We need a new plan. The projector cannot be replaced in time. This presentation was the centerpiece of everything. Taemin looked at the broken equipment, then at the empty stage. An idea formed in his mind. What if we do not use technology at all? What if we make it live? Live, Ella repeated. Humans and Viridians performing together. Music, stories, Demonstrations, real people sharing real culture, not just projections. Lady Kira shook her head. That is not how Viridians present information. It is too unpredictable. But that is the point, Taman said, getting excited. Understanding is not predictable. It is messy and personal and real. Ella studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled. Yes, we will do it your way. The next 2 weeks were chaos. Taman worked with human musicians and Viridian artists. Ayala convinced members of her court to participate, which shocked everyone. A princess doing manual work for a cultural event was unheard of. They practiced in the evenings. After official duties ended, Taman taught Ayala about human music, how it expressed feelings that words could not capture. She taught him about Viridian poetry, mathematical patterns that created beauty in sound. One night they were alone in the observation deck, watching simulated Earth stars. The festival was 3 days away. Taman, Ella said quietly, I must tell you something. This festival, these weeks with you, they have been the happiest time of my life. His heart beat faster. Mine too, Your Highness. When you speak to me, you do not see a princess. You see Ayala. No one has done that before. He wanted to tell her how he felt, how her smile made him forget about galaxies and empires, how talking with her felt like coming home. But she was a princess, and he was just a junior diplomat. The gap between them was wider than space itself. You are an amazing person, Ayala, he said instead. Anyone who cannot see that is foolish. She reached out and touched his hand, just for a moment. Viridians did not touch casually. It meant something important. Thank you, she whispered. The Festival of Understanding began on a bright station morning. Species from across the galaxy attended. Taman stood backstage, more nervous than he had ever been. Hyun Kang, the cultural ambassador, clapped him on the shoulder. You did good work, Taman. No matter what happens, you should be proud. The festival was beautiful. Humans and Viridians performed together, showing their cultures side by side. Children from different species played games together. Food from dozens of worlds was shared freely. Music filled the air. During the finale, Ayala spoke to the crowd. My people believe logic is the highest achievement, she said. But I have learned that understanding requires more than logic. It requires heart. The humans have taught me this. She looked directly at Taman. One human in particular showed me that mistakes can lead to friendship. That personal responsibility matters more than political advantage. That being lonely is not the same as being strong. The crowd applauded. Taman saw tears on some human faces. Even some Viridians looked moved. After the festival ended, Taman found Ella in the garden area. She still wore her formal robes, but her crown was set aside. We did it, he said. The festival was perfect. It was, she agreed. But now it is over. Tomorrow I return to the Viridian homeworld. You return to Earth duties. The happiness drained from Taman's chest. He had not let himself think about this ending. I wish things could be different, he said. So do I. She looked up at the artificial sky. But we are not just two people. We are representatives of our worlds. What if that does not matter? It always matters. She turned to face him. But Taman, remember this. You changed me. One human engineer changed how a Viridian princess sees the universe. That is worth something. It is worth everything, he said. They stood together under the stars, both knowing this might be the last time. Neither of them knew that bigger changes were coming, that the universe had plans neither could predict. 2 months passed. Taman tried to focus on his work, but everything felt empty now. He processed reports, attended meetings, and pretended that nothing had changed. But Yuna knew better. You need to stop checking for messages from her, Yuna said one morning, finding him staring at his communication device again. I am not checking for anything, Taemin lied. She is a princess on another world. You are here. Sometimes that is just how life works. Taemin knew she was right, but knowing something and accepting it were different things. Then the message arrived. It was not from Ayala. It was an official summons from the Viridian High Court, addressed directly to Taemin Han. Ambassador Park called an emergency meeting. They want you on the Viridian homeworld, immediately. Why? Taemin asked, his stomach sinking. The Emperor found out about your friendship with his daughter. Apparently he is not pleased. Park handed him the full document. You are being summoned to stand trial. They call it the Trial of Worth. Yuna grabbed the document. Trial? For what crime? For daring to associate with royalty while being from what they call a lesser species. Park looked grim. Taemin, you do not have to go. Earth will protect you. What happens to Ayala if I do not go? No one answered. They all knew. The princess had defended a human publicly. If Taemin refused the summons, it would shame her and possibly ruin her future. I will go, Taemin said firmly. Captain Siok Nam of Earth's flagship personally transported Taemin to Viridian space. I do not like this, the captain said, sending one of our people into their court system without protection. I have to try, Taemin said, for Ayala. A xenobiologist named Hana Shin came along to brief Taemin on Viridian culture during the journey. The Trial of Worth has 3 parts, she explained. Strength, intellect, and spirit. It was originally designed to test warriors, not diplomats. What happens if I fail? They will forbid you from ever contacting Princess Ayala again. She will be punished for showing favor to someone deemed unworthy. Hana looked sympathetic. Taemin, humans are not built like Viridians. The strength test alone could seriously hurt you. I do not care. I have to try. The Viridian homeworld was beautiful and terrifying. Crystal cities stretched across purple landscapes under a golden sun. Everything was perfectly organized, geometrically precise. Taemin felt very small and very human. The High Court met in an enormous chamber carved from a single piece of glowing stone. Hundreds of Viridians filled the viewing areas. At the center sat Emperor Valdrin himself, Ayla's father. He looked ancient and powerful, his eyes cold as he studied Taemin. Ayla stood to one side, wearing formal robes. Her face showed no emotion, but Taemin saw her hands trembling slightly. Human Taemin Han? The Emperor's voice echoed through the chamber. You have influenced my daughter. You have made her question Viridian traditions. For this, you must prove your worth. I understand, Your Majesty, Taemin said, bowing. Do you? You are about to face challenges designed for Viridian warriors. You will likely fail. You will likely suffer. Why do you not simply leave now? Taemin looked at Ayala. She gave him the smallest shake of her head, telling him not to do this. That made his decision easy. Because she is worth fighting for, he said clearly. A ripple of surprise went through the court. The Emperor's expression did not change. Begin the trials. The first test was strength. Taemin had to hold a massive stone above his head for as long as possible. Viridian challengers lifted it easily, their stronger bodies adapted to higher gravity. When Taemin's turn came, the stone felt like holding a mountain. He lifted it above his head. His arms shook immediately. Pain shot through his shoulders. 30 seconds felt like an hour. His vision started to blur. The crowd whispered that he would drop it any moment. Taemin thought about Ayala's smile. He held on. 1 minute passed. His muscles screamed. Sweat poured down his face. He could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. 2 minutes. His legs were shaking now. Any second, his body would give out. But he did not drop the stone. At 3 minutes, his arms finally failed. The stone crashed down. Taman collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. He had lasted longer than any human should have, but less than half the time of a Viridian warrior. "Pathetic," someone in the crowd said, but Elder Mora, an ancient being who served as neutral judge, made a note on her tablet. "Continue," she said. The second test was intellect. They presented a complex puzzle that required mathematical and spatial reasoning. Viridians approached it logically, solving it through pure calculation. Most finished in 20 minutes. Taman looked at the puzzle differently. Where Viridians saw math, he saw patterns. Where they saw logic, he saw art. He solved it in 15 minutes using a completely different method, one that no Viridian had ever considered. "How did you do that?" one of the court officials demanded. "I looked at it from a different angle," Taman explained. "Sometimes the logical path is not the fastest path." Elder Mora actually smiled. "Interesting," she said. The third test was spirit. They placed Taman in a neural simulation that would show him his deepest fear. Most Viridians feared death or failure in battle. The simulation would force him to confront it. Taman entered the machine. The world went dark. When light returned, he was standing in the courtroom again. But this time, Ella was speaking. "You embarrassed me," her voice said coldly. "You made me believe a human could be worth my time. You were wrong. You are nothing." The simulation, Ayala turned away from him. The entire court laughed. Emperor Valdrin stood. "Remove this worthless creature from my sight," he commanded. This was Taman's fear, not death, not pain, but being inadequate, being not enough, failing the people who mattered to him. The simulation pressed harder. Ayala's voice continued. "Go home, Taman Han. Forget you ever knew me." In a normal trial, people would fight the simulation, deny it, try to prove it wrong. But Taman stopped fighting. He stood in the middle of his fear and looked at it honestly. "You are right," he said to the simulation. "I am not enough. I am not strong like Viridians. I am not ancient like other species. I am just a human who makes mistakes." The simulation flickered, confused. "But being inadequate does not mean being worthless," Taman continued. "I cannot lift stones like a warrior, but I can be honest. I can care. I can try even when I know I might fail. That is what being human means." He thought of his grandmother's stories, of Ella's smile, of every moment that made life worth living. "My fear is real," he said, "but it does not control me. I choose to try anyway." The simulation shattered. Taman opened his eyes. He was back in the courtroom, the real one. Elder Mora was staring at him with wide eyes. The crowd was silent. "No one has ever done that," she said slowly. "You accepted your fear instead of fighting it. You showed vulnerability as strength." Emperor Valdrin stood. The entire court fell silent. "You passed," he said. His voice held something like surprise. "Against all probability, you passed all 3 trials." Taman could barely stand. His body ached from the strength test. His mind was exhausted from the puzzle and the simulation. But he had done it. "However," the Emperor continued, "passing the trials proves only that you are not unworthy. It does not resolve the political complications. My daughter is crown princess. You are a foreign diplomat with no rank. This connection between you creates problems." "Father," Ayla spoke for the first time. "He proved himself. You cannot deny that." "I deny nothing. But worth and wisdom are different things." The Emperor looked at both of them. "I will consider this matter. But do not mistake permission for approval." As the court dismissed, Taman and Ayala were not allowed to speak. Guards led him to guest quarters. But as he passed her, Ayala whispered 2 words so quietly that only he could hear. "Thank you." That night, Taman lay in bed looking at the alien stars outside his window. He had passed the trials, but the real challenge was just beginning. Somewhere in this crystal palace, Aela was fighting her own battle against tradition and duty. He just hoped they could both win. The alarm woke Taman from a restless sleep. Red lights flashed throughout the Viridian Palace. He stumbled to his window and saw military ships launching into the sky, hundreds of them moving in perfect formation. A guard burst into his room. "Emergency session. All foreign representatives to the command center. Now!" Taman dressed quickly and followed. The command center was chaos. Holograms showed star maps covered in red warning symbols. Viridian military officers shouted commands. In the center of it all stood Emperor Valdrin, his face grim. "What is happening?" Taman asked Captain Suk, who had been allowed in as Earth's military representative. "Something is attacking the outer colonies," Seok said. "Both ours and theirs. No one knows what yet." The hologram changed, showing a recording from a border station. Taman watched in horror as strange ships appeared, not flying but almost flowing through space like liquid metal. They moved in patterns that made no sense, coordinated but chaotic. "They call themselves the Swarm," General Threx explained to the gathered representatives. "They consume everything. Resources, technology, even the stations themselves. They leave nothing behind." "How many ships?" Ambassador Sora Kim from Earth asked. "Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. They replicate as they consume." Emperor Valdrin activated a communication channel to the Galactic Council. Other species appeared on screens, all facing the same crisis. The swarm was attacking everyone at once. "We must coordinate our defense," the Emperor said. "This threat affects all species equally." But the meeting dissolved into arguments. Each species wanted to protect their own territory first. Trust between civilizations was low. The Council could not agree on anything. Taman watched the tactical displays. Viridian fleets were responding with traditional military strategies, tight formations, overwhelming firepower, logical battle plans. But the swarm adapted to every tactic almost immediately. They learned and changed faster than anyone could predict. "They operate like a hive mind," Hana Shin said, studying the data. "Pure efficiency, no wasted movement, no emotion, just calculation." Aela entered the command center, wearing military armor instead of royal robes. She looked at the displays, then at her father. "We are losing ships. Our strategies are not working." "We need more time to analyze their patterns," General Threx insisted. "We do not have time." Ella turned to face the room. "We need a different approach. Something they cannot predict." Her eyes met Taman's across the command center. Emperor Valdrin noticed. "You believe the humans can help." "I believe combining our approaches might work better than either alone," Aela said carefully. The Emperor considered this. "Very well. Princess Aela will lead a joint task force, human and Viridian ships working together. If this fails, we retreat to full Viridian command." Within hours, Commander Nari Yoon arrived with a fleet of Earth ships. She was a tough woman with short hair and sharp eyes. "Show me what we are facing," she demanded. Taman found himself in strategy sessions with Viridian generals and human commanders. Aela co-led the meetings, her presence keeping both sides focused. At first, nothing worked. Viridians wanted predictable plans. Humans wanted flexibility. They argued constantly. "Your random tactics make no sense," General Threx complained. "Your rigid patterns are exactly what they expect," Commander Yoon shot back. "Both of you stop," Aela said firmly. She looked exhausted. "Taman, you have worked with both our cultures. What do you see that we do not?" Taman studied the battle recordings again. An idea was forming, one that seemed crazy but might work. "The swarm operates on pure logic," he said slowly. "They calculate every response, predict every pattern. They are like the most advanced computer in the universe." "Yes, we know this," Threx said impatiently. But computers can be confused. What if we do not use tactics at all? What if we use art? The room went silent. Explain, Emperor Valdrin commanded. Taman brought up a new display. Music has patterns, but they are emotional patterns, not logical ones. Same with visual art. The swarm analyzes everything as data. What if we overwhelm them with data that has no logical purpose? A human strategist named Gina Song caught on. Broadcast signals that are beautiful but meaningless. Move ships in patterns that look random but feel right to humans. Use our creativity as a weapon, Commander Yoon said, getting excited. Confuse their hive mind with organized chaos. This is absurd, one Viridian admiral said. How can art fight warships? Because they will not understand it, Ella said quietly. They will try to analyze it, and it will slow them down. Even a few seconds of confusion could give us an advantage. They tested the idea on a small swarm group. Taman helped create signal patterns based on Korean traditional music mixed with Viridian mathematical poetry. It made no logical sense, but had its own strange beauty. When the swarm encountered these signals, they paused, just for 8 seconds. But in space combat, 8 seconds was an eternity. It works, Gina breathed. They are trying to analyze the patterns and cannot find logical purpose. They developed the strategy further. Human ships would move in unpredictable ways, like dancers instead of soldiers. Viridian ships would provide the structure and firepower. Together, they created something the swarm could not predict. The major battle came at a colony called Haven Station. The swarm sent a massive fleet, enough to destroy everything. The joint human-Viridian force was outnumbered 5-1. Taman was on the command ship with Ayala, coordinating the unusual tactics. Broadcasting art signals now, he reported. The swarm fleet slowed, confused by the meaningless but beautiful data flooding their sensors. Human ships danced through space in patterns that looked random but formed a Korean traditional dance formation. Viridian ships struck with precision while the swarm was distracted. It is working, Ella said, watching the displays. But the swarm adapted. They started ignoring the art signals, pushing through anyway. The battle became desperate. Ships exploded on both sides. The colony was minutes from destruction. Taman had one more idea, a risky one. What if we make them feel something? They do not feel, General Threx said. They are machines. But their hive mind coordinates through shared data. What if we send data designed to create feedback loops? Emotional patterns repeated until they overwhelm the system. They tried it. Taman used recordings of human music, laughter, crying, anger, joy. Every emotion mixed together and broadcast at maximum strength. The swarm fleet suddenly stopped moving. Their coordination is breaking down, Hana reported. The hive mind is experiencing some kind of interference. The swarm fleet began firing randomly, no longer coordinated. Some ships even fired on each other. The hive mind was confused by data it could not categorize. The joint force pressed the advantage. Within an hour, they destroyed the swarm fleet completely. Haven Station was saved. When they returned to the Viridian homeworld, crowds cheered. Both human and Viridian crews were celebrated as heroes. Emperor Valdrin himself met them in the landing bay. You saved thousands of lives, he said to Commander Yoon and Ayala. Then he looked at Taman. Your strategy was unconventional, illogical, but effective. Sometimes logic is not enough, Your Majesty, Taman said carefully. So I am learning. The Emperor turned to address everyone. Today, we saw that combining different approaches makes us stronger. The Galactic Council will hear of this. That night, Taman found himself alone in a garden with Ayala. They were both exhausted, still wearing dirty uniforms, but they were alive. We did it, she said softly. Humans and Viridians working together. We make a good team. Taman, Ayla turned to face him. When we were in battle, I thought we might die, and all I could think was that I never told you how I really feel. His heart stopped. Ayla, I know it is impossible. I know there are 1,000 reasons why we cannot be together. But I need you to know. I love you. Taman pulled her close, holding her tight. I love you too. I have since the festival, maybe even before. They stood together under alien stars, knowing that love alone could not solve their problems. But it was a start. My father is changing his views, Ayla whispered. This battle showed him that humans have value beyond what he believed. Maybe, just maybe, there is hope for us. Then we will hope, Taman said, together. The victory celebrations lasted for days. Every species involved in defeating the swarm sent representatives to the Viridian homeworld. Taman received medals from 3 different civilizations, including the Viridians themselves. He stood on stages and gave speeches about cooperation and unity. But through it all, he barely saw Ayla. She was busy with official duties, meeting with dignitaries representing her empire. They passed each other in hallways and could only exchange quick glances. It was torture being so close yet so far apart. Then the announcement came. Emperor Valdrin called a formal court assembly. Everyone attended, sensing something important was about to happen. Taman stood with the Earth delegation, his heart pounding. The swarm threat has been defeated, the Emperor began. But we must look to the future. Alliances must be strengthened. The Viridian Empire needs strong connections to other powerful civilizations. Taman's stomach sank. He knew what was coming. Therefore, Princess Ayla will choose a consort from among the representatives of our allied species. This marriage will unite empires and ensure continued cooperation. Murmurs filled the hall. Representatives from powerful species stepped forward, each offering political advantages. A prince from the Kalon Federation spoke of military alliances. An ambassador from the Trevery Union mentioned trade benefits. They all wanted to marry Ayla for what she could bring their empires. Taman watched her face. She smiled politely at each suitor, saying she would consider their offers. But her eyes were empty. The princess will make her decision in 3 days, the Emperor announced. After the assembly, Taman tried to reach Ayla, but she was surrounded by advisors and potential suitors. Guards politely blocked his way. The princess is occupied with important matters, they told him. Ambassador Park found Taman that evening. Earth is offering to promote you to full ambassador rank, he said. It would give you political standing, though probably not enough to compete with princes and emperors. Why would Earth do that? Park smiled sadly. Because we have all seen how you and the princess look at each other. Because you saved thousands of lives with your creativity. Because you deserve it. He paused. But Taman, even as an ambassador, you cannot offer what these other suitors can. No military power, no vast wealth, no strategic advantage. I know, Taman said quietly. I cannot compete with empires. His sister Yunha called that night. I heard what is happening, she said, her voice worried. Are you okay? No, Taman admitted. I love her, Yunha, but I am just one person. What can I offer her? Yourself, his sister said firmly. You offer yourself. That is worth more than 1,000 empires. Not in politics. Maybe not. But in love? In life? Yes, it is. The next day, Taman met with Ayla's younger brother, Prince Kellen. They had become friendly during the joint military operations. Kellen requested a private meeting. I need to tell you something, Kellen said. Our father is not as opposed to you as he appears. Taman looked up in surprise. What? He was impressed by your performance in battle, by your creativity and courage. He has been speaking with advisors about making changes to Viridian society. Kellen leaned forward. The victory against the swarm showed him that other species, especially humans, have valuable perspectives. He is considering reforms. But he is forcing Ella to marry for politics. Yes, because that is tradition. But traditions can change. Kellen smiled slightly. He is testing her. And you. To see if you will fight for what you believe in. How can I fight against empires? By being yourself. By showing him that genuine connection matters more than political convenience. That night was the formal banquet honoring all the allied species. Taman attended in his new ambassador uniform. The great hall was magnificent, filled with beings from across the galaxy. Ayala sat at the high table with her father, far from where Taman was placed. He watched her perform her duties perfectly. She smiled at the right times, spoke to suitors with grace, played her role as princess flawlessly. But he could see the sadness in her eyes. The Oracle of Wisdom, an ancient AI entity that advised the Galactic Council, made a rare appearance at the banquet. It existed as a hologram of shifting light and spoke in a voice like wind chimes. The human species has proven itself to be an evolutionary catalyst, the Oracle announced to everyone's surprise. They bring change not through force, but through perspective. They teach old civilizations to see differently. This is valuable beyond measure. Emperor Valdrin listened carefully. What does the Oracle suggest? That rigid traditions, while stable, can become stagnant. That allowing choice even in royal matters demonstrates strength rather than weakness. That the future belongs to those who can adapt. The hall erupted in whispers. The Oracle rarely spoke so directly about political matters. After the banquet, Taman walked alone in the royal gardens. He needed to think, to figure out what to do. The gardens were beautiful at night, filled with glowing plants that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. Taman! He turned. Ayala stood there, having escaped her duties for a moment. She still wore her formal robes and crown, but her feet were bare. She looked tired and beautiful and heartbreakingly sad. You should not be here, he said. If someone sees us, I do not care anymore. She walked closer. Tomorrow I must choose a husband. They tell me to think strategically, to consider what is best for the Empire. But all I can think about is you. Ayla, I cannot give you what they offer. I have no armies, no vast territories. I am just one human who loves you. Just? She laughed, a broken sound. Just? You showed me what it means to be seen as a person instead of a title. You taught me that emotions are not weakness. You fought for me even when it was impossible. And I would fight 1,000 more impossible battles for you. They stood very close now, under the twin moons. Taman knew this was wrong, that they were both bound by duty and politics. But his heart did not care about any of that. The question came out as a whisper, barely audible. What if I asked you to marry me? Not as a princess choosing an empire, but as Ayala choosing a person. She looked at him with those violet eyes, and slowly, a smile spread across her face. A real smile, the kind he rarely saw from her. What if I said yes? She whispered back. Before either could say more, lights blazed on. Guards surrounded them, and Emperor Valdrin himself stepped into the garden. Taman's heart sank. They were caught, but the Emperor did not look angry. He looked thoughtful. I heard the Oracle's words tonight, Valdrin said, about adaptation and change, about strength in allowing choice. He looked at his daughter. And I have watched you these past months. You have never smiled the way you smile around this human. Father, Ayla began, but he raised a hand. I am an emperor. I think in terms of power and strategy. But I am also a father. And the Oracle was right. Change is not always weakness. He turned to Taman. You passed the trial of worth. You helped save thousands of lives. You showed my daughter what happiness looks like. These things matter." Taman bowed deeply, not daring to hope. "Therefore, I am announcing a new tradition," Emperor Valdrin said. "The crown princess may choose her own consort based on worth rather than political convenience. If she chooses to marry across species, the Viridian Empire will accept this as a demonstration of our commitment to the new galactic era." Ayala's hand covered her mouth in shock. "You would allow this?" "I would." Her father smiled slightly. "The Oracle called humans an evolutionary catalyst. Perhaps it is time Viridians evolved." The next day, the formal announcement was made. Representatives from every empire watched as Ayala stood before the Galactic Council. "I have considered all the worthy suitors," she said clearly. "Each offers significant political advantages, but I believe the future requires more than political convenience. It requires genuine partnership built on mutual respect and understanding." She looked directly at Taman. "I choose Ambassador Taman Han of Earth. He brings no armies or territories, but he brings honesty, creativity, and a different way of seeing the universe. Together, we will build a bridge between humans and Viridians, a symbol of what cooperation can achieve." Some species objected, others applauded, but the Oracle of Wisdom spoke again. "The princess has chosen wisely. This union represents the future more than any traditional alliance could." Emperor Valdrin stood. "The decision is made. Prepare for a royal wedding that will unite two species in a way never before attempted." Taman could barely breathe. Ella walked down from the platform and took his hand in front of everyone. "I am terrified," she whispered. "This changes everything." "We will figure it out together," he whispered back. The wedding preparations took weeks. They combined human and Viridian traditions in ways that sometimes made sense and sometimes did not. Taman's family came from Earth, his grandmother crying with joy. Ella's brother Kellen served as best man, joking that he was glad to not have to marry for politics. On the wedding day, Taman stood in traditional Korean formal wear with Viridian ceremonial symbols woven into it. Ella wore a dress that blended both cultures, white and shimmering like starlight. Ambassador Park officiated, speaking in both English and Viridian. "This union represents more than two people," he said. "It represents hope. The hope that we can build bridges across differences, that we can choose love over convenience, that the future belongs to those brave enough to change." When it came time for vows, Taman spoke from his heart. "I vow to see you, Ayla. Not the princess, not the symbol, but you, the person who loves stories and starlight, who taught me that strength comes in many forms. I will stand beside you through whatever comes in this universe or any other." Ayla's vows were simple. "I choose you. Every day, in every way that matters, I choose you." They sealed their union according to both human and Viridian customs. When they kissed, the crowd erupted in celebration. Species that had never worked together before now celebrated together. At the reception, Taman's grandmother pulled him aside. "You know what you have done, yes? You have changed the course of galactic history with love." "I just fell in love with an amazing woman, grandmother." "Yes? And that is how the universe changes, one heart at a time." Later, Taman and Ayala stood together on a balcony, watching ships from 100 worlds filling the sky in celebration. They held hands, both wearing rings that combined Earth gold and Viridian crystal. "What happens now?" Ayala asked. "Now we build the future," Taman said. "Together." She smiled at him, that beautiful, genuine smile. "I love you. I love you too." As they looked out at the gathered civilizations, Taman thought about how it all started. A clumsy accident, a spilled drink, a simple apology. Who knew that one moment of genuine honesty could lead to this? When he whispered his question in the garden, she answered with a smile. But that smile was just the beginning. Together they would teach the galaxy that sometimes the smallest voices could change everything. That love mattered more than empires. That choosing happiness over duty was not weakness, but the bravest thing anyone could do. The stars shone bright above them, and the future stretched out full of possibilities. A human and a princess, an engineer and royalty. Two people who proved that the universe was better when different voices chose to speak together. And somewhere in the garden where he first whispered his impossible question, new flowers bloomed. Human and Viridian plants growing together, creating something beautiful that had never existed before. Just like their love, just like their future. Together,